Arthur had just finished brewing tea, lighting a candle, and settling into what he hoped would be a quiet Thursday night when Jeff exploded through the apartment wall. Not the door, the wall. "Arthur!" Jeff howled, arms raised triumphantly. "I found us a fight club!" Arthur didn't look up. "You owe the landlord 14 walls. That makes 15. "This one was for a good cause," Jeff beamed. "Get your boots and your war cry. We're gonna throw hands with vampires." Arthur blinked. "Vampires?" Jeff leaned in. "And a werewolf named Todd. He smells like regret and eucalyptus." "You're not serious." Jeff's smile widened into something that would have made most exorcists cry. "Oh, I'm deadly serious. And so is the club's motto. Bleed, read, succeed." Arthur froze. "Read?" 10 minutes later, Arthur found himself outside a church basement repurposed as a literary salon, clutching a copy of Pride and Prejudice and wondering how the hell Jeff had once again talked him into something completely deranged. Inside, the room was lit by blood-red candles and lined with ancient shelves, all sagging under the weight of dusty tomes and bad decisions. Folding chairs formed a loose circle in the middle, and the smell of incense and burnt parchment hovered like a passive-aggressive ghost. A vampire in a crushed velvet smoking jacket lounged dramatically near a teacup. A translucent woman with horn-rimmed glasses floated 2 inches above her chair. A werewolf with reading glasses and a patchy beard chewed on a highlighter. Jeff strolled in like he owned the place. "Sup, nerds?" The ghost looked up from her notes. "Ah, you must be the new member. Jeffrey. Jeff the Demon, actually. Titles matter. I brought my sidekick." He slapped Arthur's shoulder. "He reads for me when the text gets too whiny." The vampire arched an eyebrow. "We're currently discussing Pride and Prejudice, Chapter 5. I trust you've both done the reading?" Jeff snapped his fingers. "I skimmed it. Darcy's clearly a cursed revenant. Dude's emotionally constipated and allergic to joy. I respect it." The ghost looked horrified. The werewolf whimpered. The vampire looked like he'd just been insulted with a wet sock. Arthur sighed. "He thinks every character is undead unless explicitly stated otherwise." "Which is suspicious in itself," Jeff added. "Why wouldn't Jane Austen clarify whether or not Elizabeth is a lich?" The ghost, Margaret, according to her floating name tag, adjusted her glasses. "We take our discussions seriously here. This is a sacred space for the exchange of elevated thought." Jeff conjured a kazoo out of thin air and blew a single, discordant note. "So am I. I have deep literary insight. For example, Chapter 12? Total missed opportunity for a sword fight." "There are no sword fights in Pride and Prejudice," the vampire said with a tremble in his voice. "And that's exactly what's wrong with it," Jeff barked, spinning toward Arthur. "Back me up." Arthur raised his hands. "I'm only here to stop you from getting exorcised by the time Chapter 9 rolls around." Todd the werewolf cleared his throat. I liked the tension between Darcy and Lizzie. It reminded me of a poem I wrote in 1993 called Moonlight Regret." Jeff turned. "Read it. Right now." The vampire groaned. "Oh God, not again." But it was too late. Todd stood, cleared his throat, and dramatically intoned, "She left her gloves on the windowsill. My paws were muddy, my heart was still. The night was long, the fleas were bold. Her scent remains, but love grows cold." There was a long silence. Jeff wiped a tear from his eye. "That was the most emotionally devastating thing I've ever heard." Margaret was clutching her notes like a lifeline. "Perhaps we should refocus. Arthur, what were your thoughts on Elizabeth's rejection of Darcy?" Arthur blinked. "Oh, right. I thought it was well earned. She stood her ground. Classic romantic tension, healthy boundaries." Jeff snorted. "She should have thrown a punch." "She was a lady," the vampire hissed. "She was a legend," Jeff countered. "And I say that as someone who once dated a banshee with anger issues, and a fondness for carving her initials into my walls." "I thought the dialogue was witty," Arthur offered, attempting to restore sanity. Jeff nodded. "Especially the part where Elizabeth implies Darcy has the emotional range of a doorknob. Top-tier roast. Would have been better with knives, though." Margaret floated slightly higher. Next week we'll begin The Picture of Dorian Gray. Jeff's eyes lit up. Oh, does someone finally get cursed and die in that one? The vampire sighed. Yes, but elegantly. Arthur stood. Okay, meeting's over for us. Jeff pouted. But we haven't even voted on next month's reading. I was gonna nominate 50 Shades of Feywild. Arthur shoved him toward the door. We're leaving before you summon something horny and unkillable again. Jeff grinned at the group over his shoulder. Same time next week, book nerds. Prepare for interpretive kazoo readings. And with that, they were gone. Arthur dragging Jeff into the night, and the supernatural book club left wondering if their sacred space had just been rewritten. The next week, Arthur arrived early, determined to salvage what little credibility he had left. He brought biscuits. Non-sentient, non-cursed, non-venomous biscuits. A peace offering. Margaret the ghost hovered politely near the tea table. Arthur, so good to see you again. Is the demon joining us tonight? Arthur nodded wearily. He insisted on bringing a literary weapon. I don't know what that means. I didn't ask. I'm afraid to know. The vampire, Archibald, full name, Archibald Delacroix Duskvale III, groaned from his armchair. He's banned from the snacks. Last week I almost ate a cookie that whispered tax advice. That cookie had strong opinions on Roth IRAs, Arthur muttered. Then the door flung open like it owed someone rent, and in walked Jeff, wearing a smoking jacket he'd stolen from somewhere fancy, a monocle glued to one eye, and a sword made entirely out of glued-together bookmarks strapped across his back. Salutations, fellow minds of the macabre, Jeff bellowed. I am here to debate, destroy, and devour ideas. Archibald stood. You look like a literary fever dream. Thank you, Jeff bowed. The monocle popped off and landed in the tea. Jeff flopped into his seat beside Arthur, who whispered, Please behave. Jeff whispered back, I brought a pipe that blows bubbles shaped like quotes. Is that behaving? No. Margaret cleared her ghostly throat. Tonight's discussion will be focused on the picture of Dorian Gray. We'll explore the themes of vanity, decay, and the duality of man. And whether or not the picture should have been set on fire, Jeff added. Archibald visibly twitched. We're not turning this into another kazoo-fueled monologue. You're just mad Dorian never turned into a were-eagle, Jeff said. Wasted potential. It's a tragedy, Margaret scolded. Jeff nodded. Exactly. The tragedy is he didn't use the painting to troll people. I'd have mailed it to my enemies. Dear Lord Valthar, here is my aging soul. Enjoy the skin flakes. Todd the werewolf raised a paw. I liked the metaphor of the painting as one's inner self. I wrote a haiku about it. Jeff slapped the table. Let's hear it, Furball. Todd stood, cleared his throat. Mirror on the wall. Bleeding colors through the cracks. Beauty fades like breath. Arthur blinked. That was shockingly good. Jeff wiped a tear. That was emotionally illegal. Margaret floated higher. Let's stay on track, please. Arthur, your thoughts on the painting as a moral symbol? Arthur cleared his throat. I think it reflects guilt in a time when society valued appearance more than integrity. Dorian's downfall isn't magic, it's indulgence without consequence. Everyone nodded thoughtfully. Jeff leaned back. Or, the painting is a magical parasite, and Dorian should have fed it old shoes to see what happened. Archibald sighed. Your interpretation is unorthodox. Unorthodox is how revolutions start, Archie. Jeff winked. Which is also what I named my unpublished memoir, Unorthodox and On Fire. Margaret placed her translucent face in her hands. Why do I keep inviting him? Jeff conjured his bookmark sword and waved it in the air. Because I bring literary chaos, emotional whiplash, and 10 out of 10 snack energy. You're not allowed near the snacks, Archibald hissed. I brought ghost macarons, Jeff said. They scream quietly when you bite them. Todd gasped. That's adorable. Arthur sighed. This is going off the rails again. It went further off the rails when Jeff challenged Archibald to a quote duel. Recite your best line from Dorian Gray, Jeff said, eyes gleaming. And I'll counter with one from The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Winner takes the last blood orange tart. No, Arthur said immediately. Yes, Jeff whispered with hunger. Archibald stood, majestic and melodramatic. The only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. Jeff stood taller, summoned his kazoo, and played 4 solemn notes. Then, he ate 1 apple on Monday, but he was still hungry. A beat of silence. Margaret whispered, "Oh dear." Todd clapped softly. "That's actually kind of deep." Jeff grinned. "See? I understand the hunger of the soul." Arthur buried his face in his hands. Margaret floated into the ceiling briefly to scream in another dimension. By the end of the meeting, Archibald had bitten a throw pillow. Todd was crying gently into a copy of Wuthering Heights. Margaret instituted a new rule. No weapons, snacks, or literary reinterpretations involving insects. Jeff immediately signed up to host next week. "Next up," Jeff declared proudly, "we're reading the Necronomicon." Arthur stared at him. "Jeff, that's not a book club pick. That's an apocalyptic spellbook." Jeff winked. "Exactly. I'm gonna highlight the fun parts in glitter." It was a dark and stormy night, naturally. Lightning cracked over the rooftop of St. Mortimer's Community Center, home to Zumba classes by day and supernatural book clubs by night. Inside, Arthur stood just outside the basement door, eye twitching. "This is the dumbest thing you've done," he muttered. "Incorrect," Jeff chirped from within, voice echoing with too much enthusiasm. "I once tried to install a jacuzzi in a pocket dimension and flooded an entire goblin town. This is at least my 6th dumbest." Arthur opened the door. The room was different now. Darker, smudged with arcane symbols. Floating candles hovered above the table, dripping wax that sizzled on contact with the floor. The book club circle had been replaced with a summoning diagram made of highlighters and old library cards. Margaret hovered at the far end of the room, visibly transparent with stress. Todd the werewolf was stress-eating whole muffins, wrappers and all. Archibald the vampire was pacing like a bat in a panic spiral. In the center of it all stood Jeff, wearing a robe made of shredded book jackets and a crown made from a bent paperback copy of Twilight. Arthur pinched the bridge of his nose. "Why are you wearing that?" Jeff posed dramatically. "Because I am the Book Baron." Archibald snapped. He brought the Necronomicon to book club. Jeff held it aloft. The ancient tome groaned like it had indigestion. "Book club means reading books. This one's very out of print." "It's bound in human skin," Arthur hissed. Jeff shrugged. "It has texture." Margaret floated closer. He started reading passages aloud. The floor began whispering back. "I thought it was audience participation," Jeff protested. Todd whimpered. The walls started pulsing. Arthur turned to Jeff. "Please tell me you didn't activate anything." Jeff hesitated. "Define activate." From the center of the diagram, the book suddenly levitated. Pages flipped violently as wind whooshed through the room, despite the windows being closed. A shadowy vortex formed above the table. The candles screamed. One of the chairs caught fire. Jeff blinked. "Okay, maybe a tiny activation." "Fix it," Arthur shouted. Jeff glanced at the book, then back at the group. "All right, plan B. Everyone say your favorite book title backwards. Go." "No!" shouted the entire room. A clawed hand began emerging from the vortex. It was followed by a second, then a skeletal head wreathed in flame and disappointment. "Jeff," Arthur whispered. "What did you summon?" "I think it's the editor-in-chief of the Abyss. I may have skipped the footnotes." The demon entity bellowed, "Who dares to misquote me?" Jeff winced. "That might have been me. I paraphrased a binding spell to make it rhyme better." The entity screamed in editorial rage. Pages flew. Pens exploded. The carpet tried to eat Archibald. Arthur dove for the Necronomicon. "We need to close it." Jeff tackled him midair. "No, wait. I have a better idea." "Better than stop summoning demons?" "Yes." Jeff turned to face the vortex. He raised his hands, inhaled deeply, and played Flight of the Bumblebee on his kazoo. The room froze. The vortex paused. Even the demon hesitated. "Wait," it muttered. "Is that a B flat?" Jeff changed key, rolled into a jazzy rendition of The Girl from Ipanema, and moonwalked in a summoning circle. The demon squinted. "You are not a threat. You are a formatting error." "Thank you," Jeff bowed. "Now back to your domain." Oh, first draft of doom. The entity sighed. Fine. But your citation style is abysmal. It vanished in a puff of rejected manuscripts. The candles snuffed out. The book slammed shut. Silence. Jeff held up the Necronomicon. Anyone want to read chapter 2? No, said Arthur, Margaret, Archibald, and Todd in perfect unison. The aftermath. The next week, the book club met in a coffee shop protected by holy wards, garlic lattes, and an anti-kazoo policy. Jeff sulked. You ban one abyssal incident, and suddenly you're not welcome at book club anymore. Arthur sipped his tea. You summoned a literary demon who criticized your grammar. He said I had style, Jeff muttered. Todd offered Jeff a poetry zine. I put your kazoo battle into verse. Jeff perked up. Really? Margaret added, it's titled, How Not to Summon a Book Demon. Archibald groaned. We're reading To Kill a Mockingbird next. Don't. Just don't. Jeff grinned. What if I make the mockingbird literal? Arthur stood. I'm going to scream into a pothole.